Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Shawn, and this is it. This is our top 10 of our 100 favorite board games of all time. We made it. We're finally here, and we're going to be counting down from 10 to 1.
And we've been working on these for a couple of months now, and it equates to basically a couple of movies worth of footage. So I'm excited that we made it to the final one.
Yeah, thank you for watching 2 movies worth of us talking about board games. That's amazing. And I don't know how many movies worth we've watched with all the editing. But it's very exciting to be here. And I feel real good about it because it turns out I think I actually lost the rock, paper, scissors in the first one. But what that means is I get to have the final number 1, which I guess is the official number 1.
No, they're both our number ones. You don't get the official one, but that does mean that I have to kick it off this time with my number 10. My number 10 is Dwellings of Eldervale, and I like so many things in this game. I like that you're putting out tiles, so you're building out the world, so every game is a little bit different. I like the worker placement aspect, and then the challenge of having to manage the number of workers you have available, because you have to change your workers into the dwellings that deal with a little bit of area control. And then I really like the tableau building element, where you're collecting your resources to get your cards, and then those cards will give you different things when you come back or different powers throughout the game. And all of it fits together so nicely with that mishmash of mechanics.
Yeah, I do really like the levels. It's like the different levels of worker placement that you've got, putting them out on the map, and then you've got where are they on the map, and then you got bringing them back onto the cards. And that is a really interesting kind of set of decisions. I also do like, although I'm torn about it, I like that you've got all of these little containers of all these different factions that you can look at, and it looks so cool. But at the same time, I do kind of wish that this wasn't quite so enormous of a box. I feel like this same game could be squished a little bit.
Possibly, but I think part of the charm for me is the big sculpts of the monsters, and having so many factions available, because I love asymmetry. So it is a flip side that I think it is worth the amount of space it takes up. And that's my number 10.
My number 10 is Great Western Trail, and a big part of this is theme. I grew up a block away from legitimate ranching country. I grew up in Alberta, and so this was just around me all the time. And so this game feels to me like a little bit of home, and it's a great game. And even though Jess disagrees, I think it does need the expansion, because the base game's great, but the expansion kind of helps the other routes, the engineering and the building, and it just makes it feel a little bit more like you're actually going to the places when you get your cows down to the end and you send them off on their lovely cow vacations. I'm sure no cows are getting hurt. But it's a game that I'll play again and again. And I know we still have the old version. I've been so tempted by the new version, but I am pretty cheap. And Argentina's coming out soon, and so I figure I'll finally get those hats, and I'll be able to, I'm just going to use the dudes with hats in all of them, because that's really the main thing drawing me to that new version.
I think I've actually been won over to the expansion, because when we first started playing with it, what I loved about Great Western Trail was the quick pacing of it. And then when we got the expansion, it's not that complicated, but it just added just slightly more that I felt like, at least as we were learning it and learning what the different places were, it slowed down the pace a little bit. But I think you're right. It really does open up the alternative strategies and makes those stronger. And in our most recent plays, when we haven't played with it, I think I was like, yeah, I do agree. The expansion really ups it that necessary amount.
And that is my number 10.
My number 9 is Cascadia. And Cascadia reminds me of home, probably a little bit like Great Western Trail reminds you of home. It's set in the Pacific Northwest, and I grew up in British Columbia. So I just love the landscapes and the animal tokens. And I always enjoy games that you are building something out. So by the end of the game, you can kind of look down and see what you've built. And I really enjoy the nature theme and the simplicity of you take one tile and one token, and then you put it out. And then every game you can choose different goal cards for how the animals go out. And so every game does feel different.
Yeah, there's something really impressive about when a designer can create one of those just super simple designs that's also addictive. That's what every designer wants to do, I think. And so when someone nails it, it's just so impressive. And this one absolutely nailed it. And yeah, I agree. I can play this one over and over and over and never get tired of it.
Yeah, it's super satisfying to build it out. The art by Beth Sobel is really lovely, and that's my number 9.
My number 9 is Baron Park. And it's interesting that you went with, I don't know actually if it's your favorite light game, maybe you have another one, but with one of your favorite light games at number 9, because I went with my favorite light game at number 9. And Baron Park's one of those games that I really got into fairly early into when we were really getting back into board games. And I think at that point we were kind of driving to like heavier, heavier, heavier. I think as people do, and we kind of hit in our peak. And then I got this, and I was like, you know what? I really like light games. I don't need everything to be so heavy. I like a mix, and this is the one that kind of opened that door and then got us to pick up more of these. And it really is fun just to have a game that you kind of sit down and play in 20 minutes, and that's always engaging and always interesting. And it's full of bears, and who doesn't love bears? So yeah, it's such a great light game.
Yeah, it does a really good job at being very instinctive, and I do like the goal cards that come out each game as well, because that pushes you towards kind of different strategies. So sometimes you're all going for koalas, so you're kind of racing each other to pick up those koala tokens, and it's just that little extra touch makes it, again, each game feel pretty different.
That is my number 9.
My number 8 is Horrified, and you were just talking about light games, and I think that this is my favorite light game. It is very light, but it's cooperative, and I love cooperative games, so I really like something that we can take out, kind of play in under an hour, and that still feels so different every time we play it, because you're able to kind of mix and match the different monsters. And I also, like you, when you had this on your list, went with the Universal Monster theme, because a big part of this experience was going back and watching the movies, which I hadn't seen before. So every time I play this, I also think of the movies and appreciate the nods towards them.
Yeah, and Prospero Hall are just terrific at this sort of thing. Like, they've done so many solid branded games, and we've got some that have been like Fast and the Furious. I think we picked it up for like $8, and I expected nothing, and it's actually fairly fun. And there's been a bunch like that were like, oh, this was surprisingly good, and this has got to be like one of the biggest surprise of any game that we've ever purchased, and how much we've liked this.
I think that is a key thing, is expectations were really low, and it just blew us out of the water. And we really appreciate games that are affordable, that are still really fun to play, and this certainly fits that bill. And that's my number 8.
My number 8 is Marvel Champions, and I stayed away from this one for a while, and for a bunch of reasons. First was that I thought I would buy all of it, and I did buy all of it, but also I've never been that into kind of deck builders, or not deck builders, but like ones where you pre-build a deck before, games like Magic. But this ended up really surprising me, because I thought, I'm only going to use the standard decks. I'm not even going to bother building decks. And within a week of having it, I was like, oh, which ones come with Hulk? Oh, we need those 2 cards. Oh, we got to get Beat Cop. We got to get this thing. Oh, I can build such a cool deck with that. And I got lost into it, and I haven't come back. And I'm just so into this game, whether I'm playing it solo or playing it co-op, and playing all the different bad guys, playing all the different combos. X-Men coming out soon. I'm super excited. And yeah, it's one of those ones that I'm thinking about when I'm not playing it. I'm like, oh, what if I put this aspect with this guy? What if I did this mix over here? What if these 2 guys teamed up against this person? And yeah, when you're thinking about a game like that, you know that it's got into you.
Yeah, it is one that you can play in so many different ways, not only for playing all the different characters and all the different villains, but I really liked playing the campaign. And so I was Ant-Man and you were Scarlet Witch, and I still have an affinity for Ant-Man after having played a few games in a row and really getting them super strong. By the end, the 2 working together, they had such great, powerful kind of cards, and we had really figured out their deck by then.
Yeah, it is really fun doing those campaigns, and we still have a couple that we haven't even played yet as well. So there's so much more for us to explore with this, which just still makes it so exciting. And that is my number 8.
My number 7 is Lost Ruins of Arnak. And I, first of all, love the production. I love like the spearheads and the gems, and everything just looks really nice. That as soon as we get it to the table, I'm always like really excited to play it. But I also love the having to like come up with the combos or to stretch out your turn as long as possible, because it always seems like there's always like one more thing you can do, and then that one more thing leads you to, oh, now it opens up this possibility. And I just love those moments of realization when you kind of are able to spot the way to make something work when you didn't know if you could necessarily do it. And I think what makes this so high is also when they added on the expansion, and having those asymmetric characters makes such a difference.
Yeah, the asymmetric characters, I'm surprised by how different they feel. Like, I really like the one that has a lot of curse cards and you don't mind gathering curse cards. And then there's the lady with the falcon, and she plays so different. And there's the billionaire, and she plays, and I feel too like when I'm the billionaire, like she's awful. I just feel like she's awful, and so I get into that character when I'm playing it, or when I'm the captain or the explorer, whatever. They all feel like they kind of have personalities, and that kind of comes out when you're playing them.
Yeah, and so it's great to try all the different ones, and then they've also added the different temple tracks, and because the temple tracks are what you're trying to get up through all your games, having different ones also makes quite a bit of difference. So again, this is one that I want to keep coming back to and keep playing and keep exploring, which is the sign of what makes it so good. And that is my number 7.
My number 7 is viticulture, and I feel like we've talked a lot about expansions. In fact, I wish there wasn't so much, but this is another one where the expansions just really did help. And we don't buy expansions for every single game. We got plenty on this game that don't have expansions, trust me. But this one was made a lot better with Tuscany, and then made even better with Viticulture World. And Viticulture World is what shot it way up my list. I think last year this was somewhere in like the 40s for me, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. But now with Viticulture World, and with that, just I really like a tight cooperative game, like a difficult cooperative challenge. And this has got 6 of it with Viticulture World. And then without Viticulture World, even if it didn't have that, this game has grown on me so much over the last year. It just makes sense that you harvest, or you plant your field, you plant your grapes, you harvest your grapes, you make your wine, you sell your wine. Just the steps are like, obviously that's the next thing I do. And I love how intuitive that is.
And one of the best things about Viticulture World is kind of recognizing that most people need to kind of follow those steps, so giving you the option to have more players on those positions. But the challenge is you really have to try and get those tiles that let everybody to do the action or strengthen it early and as often as you can. But usually it kind of comes to the compromise of something else. So it's kind of investing early on for kind of a bigger long-term payoff.
And I like, there's been a lot of people complain the Viticulture World kind of takes away the wine part of it a bit, but I don't mind that, because I feel like in Viticulture World you're kind of running a business. And I like that it can feel a little different, and that there are different paths. You don't necessarily have to play the exact same game as Viticulture or Viticulture Tuscany. You can play a different game, and that is really cool. And it's cool that feels different too in the different regions. And that is my number 7.
My number 6 is Terraforming Mars, and I love the theme. I'm fascinated by like space exploration and terraforming planets. And this game was actually inspired by a book called The Red Planet, which I read. So I really kind of appreciate the science that might actually go into terraforming a planet. But I like the tile placement and seeing the world transform, particularly with our version, because we have the lovely 3D tiles. So it looks amazing as it goes from like this stark red planet with actually having like the greenery and the cities, and then all of the different cards. And the deck is so huge that kind of the engine that you're building is going to be different every game.
Yeah, I do like that, how different it feels from game to game, because it feels just completely different. And some people do talk about how this one can take a little long, but I find it shines at 2 players, because we play it pretty quick. Like we'll rock through a game of this in just over an hour, and it feels like such a full experience too. And I do still prefer this to Ares. I like Ares a lot, but I still do prefer this because I like actually seeing that stuff out on the planet. I like the actual terraforming of Mars.
And I think it helps that we play two players primarily. And so Ares, I think, probably would suit people who tend to play at a higher player count. But we play two players and we take terraforming very seriously. So we do push up those tracks quite quickly. So I do think I'd feel differently about this game if it took us a couple hours. But because it plays so quickly for us, I love it. And that is my number 6.
My number 6 is Pandemic Legacy, and I am clumping kind of the whole series together, but if I had to choose one, I'm choosing Season 0. And I really went back and forth on this because I loved Season 1. Season 1 was such a terrific experience. We hadn't played a Legacy game before, and it was like, oh, this can be great. I get it now. Season 2, bit of a drop off. Season 0, though, totally won me back. And a big part of it is just that Cold War theme to it. And the pieces, like those little red agent guys, are great. And I won't give anything away, so I won't say anything more than that. That's like right out of it. You can see that on the back of the box. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the theme. And it got me back into it. I didn't hate it like some folks did. It didn't totally lose me. But this, I think, really recaptured that glory.
Well, it's interesting because my number 5 is Pandemic Legacy.
But you're going with Season 1.
I loved 0, and right after I played 0, I would have said 0 was my favorite because it was the most recent one. But exactly what you said, thinking back to it and having this kind of be our first Legacy experience, it really blew me away. And I remember when we first started playing, we thought, oh, what if we can only play it once? Is it going to be worth it?
Yeah.
But it really was. And it got to the point when I almost was wishing we would lose games because that would give us an additional game to play. That kind of is like, oh, good, we lost. That means we're going to get another gameplay out of this. And it was just phenomenal. I love working together. Again, we just played the two of us. And so you do need like great teamwork to be able to progress, and having every game be different with the rule set or introduce something new is exciting.
Yeah, I got it. When we got this, I was totally like, oh, is it worth it? We're only going to play 12 times. And I didn't think most games we play, I don't know, 15, 20 times if we love it. Right? So 12 times, a lot of plays for a game. And we probably got 15, 16 because we lost quite a bit in both of these. And now after we played that first one, we're like, what other Legacy games are there? Let's get all of them. So both of these are great. And that is my number 6.
And that's my number 5.
My number 5 is Everdell. And we actually played this yesterday. And because I was like, do I still like Everdell top 5? And we played it yesterday. I was like, yeah, 100% I do. It's so charming. It's charming to put all of the, like, the berries and the wood and everything. We always put it on the board. So many other games, we put it in our little, like, containers. And here we can't do that because it looks so nice. And it just feels good when you go there, and that the rocks are slippery and smooth. And the tree, even though that dumb tree is almost fully fallen apart for us, I still always set up the tree to get the full experience. And it is such a great experience. How pleasing it is putting the doors on the houses when I add a person to that house, and how different it feels every time depending on, like, am I doing a ton of farms this time and getting a ton of the, the folks living inside of the farmhouses, or am I going a whole other way and being mean and forcing you to get the fool, and then you got to get the dungeon and put the fool in the dungeon, and all that stuff, all those little, like, stories and just the things that you kind of come back to every time you play it. It's just such a comfortable and just like a lovely game.
And I kind of like the progression that I think most players go through for this game, where you start by thinking, oh, can I make a town with 15 constructions and critters? And then you get to the point where I'm like, yeah, I can do it. Actually, it's not that hard.
And so that progression does feel really good, and it feels great having that last turn where you just do oodles and all of your dreams come true finally in that last turn. So that is my number 5.
My number 4 is Arc Nova, and this is a pretty new release, and everyone's talking about it, but for good reason. It is a fantastic game, and it has an immediate draw for me because I have a background in primatology and conservation. So there are a lot of cards that really hit home for me that remind me of some of the things that I've done. But I really enjoy building out the tiles and figuring out those card combinations that work really well, and then that scoring mechanism of the end of the game being triggered when the two markers cross means you always have to keep an eye on your opponents, because as soon as they trigger the end, you've got to make sure you're probably close enough, or else you're going to be getting negative points.
It really did meet expectations, and we've talked about it before, like how much it kind of mushes those things together. But one of the things I really appreciate, and I hadn't really thought about this till last time we played, but it's when you have those like reptile houses and petting zoos and the aviary, and just putting the little cubes on it to represent the animals. There's something pleasing about that, and even just flipping the pen or the enclosures to show now an animal lives here as well. There's just something about that that makes it a little bit less abstracted. I know it's not that much less, but it's that little bit less that I need to really tie me into the game.
I feel like it does get compared to terraforming Mars a lot, and I think a lot of it has to do with what you said of having the cards, but then also having the board that represents kind of some of those aspects of the cards that does kind of piece it all together. And that is my number 4.
My number 4 is Dune Imperium, and this was pretty high on my list last year. And honestly, last year I wasn't sure if it was like a recency bias, but it's held on this year, and I still love it. It has not gone away at all, and it is just, it feels like Dune. It's the tenseness of it, and I think a big part of that is that you're only playing to 10 points. And so every single point you're like scraping and scrounging for, and it's those, the tough little wars and going and just getting that one little bit of water and moving up that one little bit on the political tracks. And it feels like Dune in that way, just in that it's hard and everything you're doing is hard and everything feels like such an uphill battle, but in like a fun, rewarding way.
Yeah, and the battle part is a key part of it, and because points are hard to come by, there might be times when you kind of sit a battle out to be able to like save the troops to go next time. And one thing that it did for the 2-player version that actually works really well is there is a simple bot player that is really straightforward to use that takes up worker placement spots and gets in the way surprisingly often. And then for the battle, you never know how much they're going to put in. So it is nice that there is that third unknown factor.
Yeah, the 2-player variants that have a bot usually scare me a little bit. I just worry, how much work is that going to be? But this one does it perfect. It's like zero work. It's like flip a card, put some stuff in, put the dude down on the thing. That even sounds like more work than it is. It's no work. It's so easy. And there's even an app that makes it even easier if you need it to be easier, but honestly, it's not even necessary. Yeah, I think you're totally right. They nailed it with the bot. And so that is my number 4.
My number 3 is Anachrony, and I love the world that you're thrown into. It's post-apocalyptic, but also pre-apocalyptic as well, because you all then like you're in this like terrible world that you then have to evacuate because it's going to get destroyed. And part of that is the decision of kind of worker placement and of where you're going to send your workers. And we got the mech suits. And that makes such a difference, I think, because I really feel like putting the person in the mech suit and then sending them over to the planet does have such a different feeling to being able to just use them on your own board. So I really appreciate how the theme has kind of been integrated throughout all of the game, and then being able to take on the different factions that exist in this world and who all play so differently and all have different evacuation conditions. Again, makes every game seem different.
Yeah, it does. It just has a lot of variability in it, like in all those different buildings that you're going to have in your building with the different factions, like you say. And man, those mech suits are just so necessary. It feels so nice putting your guy into the top of it and just seeing that little head peek out when you put them onto the planet. Man, is that satisfying. And everything that you said and more. I absolutely adore this game. It's one that doesn't get to the table as much as I'd like just because there is a lot of setup, and we got almost too many expansions for it, and I feel like that's almost slowed us down because it's great to have all of the options, but at the same time it's like, oh, which ones are we going to choose? What do we need to pull out? What comes from what box? So I love it, but that can sometimes be a little bit of a double-edged sword.
And that is my number 3.
My number 3 is Ultimate Railroads, and this is my newest, highest game that is on this list. I got this and I just immediately fell in love with it. And we probably have only had this for, I don't know, 3-4 months. And I bet I've played it 15, 16 times now. I played it with you when you got tired of playing it. I played it with other friends when they got tired of playing it. I played it by myself. I just love this game, and part of it is that Ultimate Railroad is a whole bunch of different ones, and they all do feel a little bit different. And this is just a track game. This is just you're moving stuff up a track. You're putting your workers out on the board. You're moving stuff up tracks. But oh boy, is it satisfying. And all of the different boards feel so different, and just all of the different little tweaks you can make feel so different. And I can just play it over and over and over and over. It's got me so hooked.
I also like this. You made it sound like a little bit like I did it, but I do. I had it in the top half of my list. I really enjoy playing it. And again, finding those combos is so satisfying. And it's something you get way better at. Because I remember the very first game we played, we had like fairly low scores. And then almost each game afterwards, we were adding like 50 points to each of our scores subsequently until we were able to figure it out and get those combos going in a way that pays off big.
Yeah, this game definitely makes you feel smarter the more that you play. I was like, why would anyone ever need that 300 point token? And I think last game I was like, oh yeah, I get it now. And man, it's such a fun challenge. And so that is my number 3.
My number 2 is Gloomhaven, and I love dungeon crawlers. I played a lot of D&D before, so I love being able to escape into a dungeon, and I love cooperative games, and this does everything so well. First of all, it's a dungeon crawler that Shawn likes playing because it has cards instead of dice, so that's a win. And it is that legacy aspect, and this is so high on my list because when we got it took over. We played it like every night, multiple games in a row. So even though it's been a while since we finished our campaign, it's still so high because of the influence that it had. It sparked that kind of creativity, that interest. I was thinking about it all of the time, and I just loved playing through all of it and being so many different characters, and I'm just so excited for Frosthaven.
Yeah, and you're right. It is one of the only dungeon crawlers. I like the idea of dungeon crawlers a lot. And there are a few dungeon crawlers I will play, but I'm not as in love with it as Jess is. But this one caught for me because it feels a lot like a Euro game. Just that you can only use very few cards, and you can only use them very few times, and you're losing them and you're losing them, and you're always playing that top and that bottom part of the card, and it really is a puzzle. It's more a puzzle than it is anything else, and it's a puzzle that I'm really interested in, and opening up the other dudes and the whole experience and how we got more people as we went through, and all of that it captured both of our imaginations.
I am curious if Frosthaven is going to change the position of this for me, but we'll find out when I get it. For now, it's my number 2.
My number 2 is Anachrony, and the reason I think I love Anachrony so much is even though it is a fairly heavy game, it's so intuitive, and it's heavy in just kind of like the right way. Like it's really thinky, and you really are kind of planning out your turn. But more than that, I feel like it just immerses you in the game. Like that decision making locks you into the game. I don't know what's going on around me. I don't know how time works anymore. I'm not focusing on anything else. I'm just so in here and locked into putting my guys in a mech suits and putting those out onto the world to get the different minerals and building out and adding the different buildings to my own little world that I'm building over here and worrying about the coming new apocalypse that's after the last apocalypse because you're right in between apocalypses. And all of that stuff has just got me 100% focused the whole time.
And one thing I appreciate about it is it does build you into it because it has, like, it starts off with being able to choose your boards, and it can be everyone has the same starting board, or you can go with the flip it around and do different ones as well. And same with your characters, there's A or a B side. And then even same with like the timeline that you're using to kind of go back and get resources. You can flip that if you want. That kind of gives you bonuses or punishments depending on like where you are in placing those tokens. So I really appreciate that even just the base game kind of has so many knobs to turn up or down as you see fit.
It's so much to get immersed into, and I'm fully there. And so this is my number 2.
My number 1 is Everdell, and I just love this. I think part of it is kind of the nostalgic reason of this was a game that we played at a board game cafe at the start of when we were getting into the hobby. And it was really, because I had played gateway games for a number of years, so a lot like Pandemic and Forbidden Desert and lots of those kind of games and party games. But once I played this, I was just blown away. It was really like, this is what a board game can do. And I love the adorableness and the how beautiful everything is. And so much so that like we got just the base game of this and all of the expansions. And which means we're missing a lot of the critters. So the different critter meeples, which for the most part really don't do anything. But I just love this game so much. I want to be able to choose out of all of the different animal factions. So I am so excited for the Everdell big box where I can get all of the factions I don't have, as well as a couple of new expansions that are included in that as well.
Yeah, we both do this for sure, where we just kind of we dive way into the world of something that we really like. And yeah, we got the non-collector's edition, so we're missing those axolotls. And we really want those axolotls. There's platypuses as well. I'm not sure about putting this is going to really be a point of contention. Putting the stickers on all of them. Jess is very excited to put the stickers on all of them.
It's gonna look adorable.
I kind of like how they look au naturel. We may just have to keep this one at the same time just to have both versions of all of the animals too.
But the expansions are great because they not only add more critters, but I do like that they add different ways to play. So I can use more Everdell all the time. It is my favorite game, my number 1 game.
My number 1 is Gaia Project, and this is a new number 1 for me this year. I think it was I actually haven't gone back and looked yet at where we were last year because I didn't want it to influence my decisions this year, but I'm not even sure this was top 10 for me last year. But this has shot up to number 1 for me this year. I've just really gotten deep into it and into all the different factions, and there's 14 different factions in this, and they all play super differently, and into the different things you can do with the tech tree and the different ways that you're building out the planets. And I like Terra Mystica as well, but I enjoy the variability more in this one. I enjoy how much better this plays for 2 players, and I enjoy the little bit of added complexity of that tech track as well. And just the factions feel so different to me as well. And this is another, heavy-ish game, fairly heavy game, really, but that plays super intuitive. Once you got those couple little trickies in there, you're like, this isn't actually like the rules I have to play with aren't that complicated, but the stuff I can do with those rules is very complicated.
It is working all of my brain. I feel like we kind of say like when we're like a computer that's overheating, and this is that because you are so focused on what you're doing and how you can do more. And like you said, kind of looking for those moments of like, I only have 1 of this and 2 of this. Is there a way that I can get this other building out, and trying to find those opportunities and setting yourself up for those income turns for next time of what you need. And every game is a new challenge, whether it's a new faction or the board layout is different, or the tiles that go on the tech trees are different, or the tiles that go out on the rounds. Is it really pushes you in different directions all the time.
And we've talked a lot, I think, about expansions with this list, but this one doesn't have one, and it does not need one. And I love that about it too. This is everything you will ever need in this box. I guarantee you, they put an expansion next year, and I get it. My tune changes. But right now, this is everything you'll ever need. And I think part of that too is that this kind of it took everything they learned from Terra Mystica, and it took those expansions, and it boiled all that stuff down into one box. And so this feels like it's already got all the expansions. It's got all of their ideas, all of the designers' thoughts smushed into this box, and oh, it's great. And that is my number one. And that is it. We made it. We made it, everybody. If you watched all of this, thank you so much. If you just watched a bit of this, thank you so much. But that brings us to the end. That is the end. That is our 10-1. That is our number one. We don't have another one of these coming out, although we'll have a lot more videos.
And we will have one where we kind of do a comparison a little bit with last year, because that's the nice thing about doing one each year, is kind of looking back and seeing what are some major changes and what that might mean as well. So do keep your eyes posed, because there will be one kind of follow-up to this top 100 list.
Yeah, keep your eyes posed and peeled. And I am excited to look at that, actually, because like I said, I haven't actually looked at my last year because I didn't want to be influenced. And so it's like the second we're done this, I'm going to go pull up that list and start that comparison and start doing that math, because I love me some stats.
Thank you so much for watching. If you played the games, please let us know in the comments. Please like, subscribe. All of that helps us out. And hopefully we'll see you for the next one.